I would wish I would have doubled down on what I call like everything is figure-outable mindset even earlier. I had to learn that your energy flows where your focus goes. Earlier in my career, I spent worrying about what if it goes wrong. So it's a great shift to say, what if it actually works, right? Or we can make it work.
Hello, and welcome to Behind Numbers, the podcast where we look beyond the surface to uncover what isn't visible from the outside. I'm your host, Alessandro Cozzi, and today I'm joined by Jenny Fuss, a seasoned global CFO with deep expertise leading finance transformations across complex, capital-intensive, and multinational organizations. Welcome to Behind Numbers, Jenny.
Thank you, Alexandro. And it's so great to have another chance to chat with you.
Absolutely. It is always very nice to chat with you, and it is great to have you on the podcast. I've just mentioned something, and it is obvious that, Jenny, you have led finance organizations across continents, industries, and ownership structures. Looking back at the very beginning of your career, what early experiences or moment you think have shaped you on who you are and how you think right now?
There were a lot of points, right, in my career, just moving from my hometown to another city and taking my first professional role from, moving then from Germany to China. And after China, 6 years to the United States, where I found my new home, right? And we are here already for the last 10 years. And I think what always really shaped me, like my curiosity and leaning into something new and challenges. And actually, I would think I can confidently say people would describe me as fearless, always going into, leaning into, even though I had no idea when the decision was made what it would do to me moving to China. And it was the same also with moving to the US. But I think that goes back to you will never be 100% ready for your next step. And taking it on, it's about the learning.
How do you then think about risk? Because going from Europe, then to China, then to US, it must have been tough on making that leap and saying, yes, now I'm going to move to China, a place that maybe you have been there, but just maybe for vacation or maybe never been there. So which were the things that you were thinking of? Shall I do it, or shall I stay, or shall I take another path?
Hmm. I think for me, we have to put that here in perspective because people have probably their assumptions that somebody who is a chief financial officer is very risk adverse, right? So I'm not risk adverse or that type of person. But I think when I make those decisions, of course, I think about the pros and cons. That in those moments, it was more like I was seeing like what is the potential I will be learning in there. It would be a little bit like getting thrown into water that is ice cold and you start swimming. And that was always something that was driving my decision. Going into in a balanced way that there will be things I will learn, there will be things that I may not appreciate a lot, or there will be even days that will be hard. Because when you live in a country where the don't speak the language, you do not understand the culture, particularly in the first year, that was very tough and learning what it is to be by yourself. You don't have your family and friends around you. And that were things that I had to learn. I'm very grateful for it. And even now, 16 years later, there are moments where it's really hard that you cannot just drive by your family house and say hi and get a hug. Those moments are still here, even 16 years later. Um, I'm really still grateful for what everything else happened to me as a person, where I had to adjust culturally, where I had to adjust how I approach things, where it was broaden my horizon. That are all things that is the reward of taking the calculated risk.
I am really curious to know, which are the major differences that you have found in working and leading in Europe versus in China versus here in the US?
I think we all have to realize that in today's world that we have to anyway adjust to it because we work in global settings. And so I would say you have to be aware of your environment and you have to build your own emotional intelligence and reading people. It is really more building that skill set, being able to adjust and be reflective of who is your audience, right? I think there's this one generic rule, know your audience. And that's a very big key to be also successful in what approach you are picking. Just also understanding that there are certain stereotypes that are created by the environment you grew up and they make us who we are, and calling that out helps also a lot, right? When I recognize when I get into my very rigid, stubborn situation and I'm overcoming it, my team, when I say, okay, we know what we are dealing with right now. So let's open it up again.
Do you think that being German helped you? And meaning, so I see the Germans, they do have always a framework. So having frameworks also on how to do things and adapt that framework or use that framework to learn how to work there, how to lead there. Do you think that helped you?
Yeah, I think, yeah, like having your own internal compass or, yeah, absolutely. I think like knowing your why, right? Your deep inside why helps you to maneuver through difficult situation where we are humans, right? When there's uncertainties or we get out of the comfort zone, those are moments where I think you having your own framework and your own why will help you through, which I would say for me, it goes back to this, you will only learn outside of your comfort zone. And I have to remind myself in difficult situations on that because we all have this fight or flight situation, but it's like, okay, now let me lean in and see what I will be learning in that situation. But I do have the option also not doing it, but it's my choice. But I think in those moments, bringing that back to your own why or your own framework will help you to make that decision.
Definitely. It makes sense. And it is obvious that you have done tremendous things across your entire career. And I was thinking, as you moved from technical finance to really leading a full profit and loss and being the CFO, the responsibilities are changing dramatically. So, when did you first feel the true pressure of being the decision maker? What was it like? Did you like it? Were you more scared about it or were you just ready for it?
I think in full transparency, there was also a lot of fear in that or anxiety because you could say like one thing is reporting about the weather. The other is steering the ship through the storm.
Speaking about storms, you have navigated through big storms, including market crashes, including COVID. So, during some of your most difficult moments, what was one or some of the hardest decisions that you had to make?
I mean, the typical one as a CFO was always capital allocation. And, in a public to private transition, that is obviously one of the hardest decision making. There's so much complexity behind that. And at the end, it's also not just like a one person decision.
One of the recurring theme is also how to build teams and how to know that the teams that you've got in place, it is the right one, or it is the right one also not just right now, but in 1 year, 2 years, and 3 years. How do you generally think about building your teams and knowing that that's the right team, that's the right setup?
Hmm. I think I got a lot inspired by the Energy Bus book, and I apply that a lot because it's not only what people do, it's also a lot how they do it. And I don't like to call it vision because that sometimes gets over you, but you have to have clarity. What's your direction? That's also have the right person in the right box. That also then I like to think about you can expand a box, okay? And it comes always with that clarity. The bus has a goal, has a target it's going to. you're sitting next to the right people, right? And we all know when one person on the bus that is annoying and how that is impacting the entire bus. So I always like that example and that thinking pattern from the energy bus.
I love it. I love it. And I do have also the $1 million question here. Um, Everyone is talking about the same thing. So everyone it is talking how the role of the CFO is going to change with AI.
Hmm.
Nobody knows it yet how, but I'm curious to know your thoughts and how do you think that your role or your team it could change based on that?
I sometimes wish I could ask that question when the computer was invented and people had to answer that question. Your typing machine is going away. What are you thinking about the computer coming in? And maybe I should ask somebody. Uh, I think it will be complementary and it will accelerate on what leaders can actually influence. And I think that is not only the CFO with AI, that is on every level. If it's the chief accounting officer, the controller, or the business unit leaders, I'm very excited about it because I'm also driven by myself getting every day 1% better. And I can say that since I'm using AI, makes me also more fulfilled and satisfied. And it's more about what's the impact of it. And if I can spend more time thinking with my team than trying to validate numbers and data, I'm sorry to say, but I'm getting totally excited about that.
So that it seems that you think about it as something that can give you kind of superpowers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, I'm also still learning here, right? So there's still different elements of I'm playing with and failing as well, but also knowing from past experience, that's the moment when you lean in, you work over your frustration that you just spend 2 hours chatting with Copilot and still don't have the result that you were expecting. Just thinking about how to prompt more effectively and efficiently as well is a journey itself, but I can tell since I'm using it, it's also a fun journey to learn. But I think it is exactly those moments when it's not working out and you're not getting it to lean in and say, yeah, let me ask it differently here. And again, the superpower was those language models is to also prompt them, don't be nice with me. That you are surprised that suddenly that you get a different data point also provided. So it's very
Yeah.
biased.
Well, because it is trained with the data that we put in, which is
Yeah.
biased data. But I really like the way that you're thinking about it, which is not so much on the scary side, but it is more, well, I can really use this. And this can really help me in doing a better job, and not just for me, but for the whole team. And then at the end of the day, for the whole company. So it is great.
Finance. I mean, we do a lot of like data chasing, manipulating data. I think organizations have been in the past that when you ask an analyst, where do you spend your time? Is it 8 hours on modeling? I think they would wish for it, but probably they spend 6, 7 hours in collecting the data and then only 1 or 2 hours on modeling. Think about if you ship that, how much more powerful that can be when then the modeling leads to different decisions, better decisions, and so on. And that's how I see it and how I feel actually in my personal AI learning curve.
Definitely. I recall when I was doing finance show that maybe I was in a board meeting and we had this model up. And it is obvious that during the board meeting, there was someone that was going to ask you, what if we will change this and this and this? And the answer was always, well, let me go back, let me think about it, let me have the data, and then I'm going to answer. What if we can be inside that board meeting and answer on the spot?
Yeah,
Because the data is there and
absolutely.
we have the AI that is fetching the data, and so that we can change everything just on the spot and answering to every question. It would be amazing. So
Yes. Yeah. Looking forward to that.
me too. And for the people who aren't in finance, several times the CFO role is often seen as just owning the numbers. If the numbers look good, the CFO must be good. But we both know that it is much more than that. So, what does success mean to you?
So success is to me if I can see then what I'm contributing is leading to a better outcome. And the better outcome is not only measured by EBITDA up, right? It's also by we had a drawback somewhere, and now I can see the team is leaning in to understand the root cause, that suddenly the EBITDA is not making that better. But you see in operational situations where your EBITDA is slipping, and it's not changing tomorrow, but it's also like when you ask them the question, why did it happen? And then, of course, there are very operational systems that you go through an AD report, and I don't want to quote that. There are tools for it. But it always starts also from a leadership perspective, and also as a CFO to ask, enlighten the right questions and have the team looking into that. Then you will create also the muscle, because there will be always the next situation where you have to consider maybe the history, the mistakes we did when we made a wrong turn, or we should have looked at maybe another data set before making that decision. As a CFO, at the end, everything becomes a number. And so that makes me ultimately responsible for everything. That feels on some days very heavy, but it's also that excitement that when you work with all those different experts around you and you are building an organization that has the right muscle trained, long term, you will be successful. So there's this in that moment, and then there is this influence you have in the long run. And I think always you could say, Jenny, but long run means I need to call you in 5 years. Yes, check in with me in 5 years. And we talk about it. What I had defined today as success was actually accomplished. But I'm very confident that we will have an exciting another chat in 5 years.
So, we will need to do this podcast maybe even sooner than 5 years.
Yeah. Okay.
And we're always closing the podcast with one question. So, if you could go back and change one thing, that it could be one decision, one mindset, or even something that you wish you had known earlier, what would it be and why?
I think I would wish I would have doubled down on what I call like everything is figure-outable mindset even earlier. I had to learn that your energy flows where your focus goes. Earlier in my career, I spent worrying about what if it goes wrong. So it's a great shift to say, what if it actually works, right? Or we can make it work. And yeah, I think that would be something I would wish I would have recognized way earlier in my career.
Jenny, so first, thank you so much for sharing with us all your journey. It has been a pleasure having you on Behind Numbers.
Awesome. It was great to be behind the numbers. Let's make sure we enjoy the journey and the people we are traveling with.
I love it. I love it. And again, thank you so much. And for everyone else listening, thank you for joining us. If you have enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to follow Behind Numbers for more stories from the leaders shaping the future of finance and business. I am Alessandro Cozzi. Thank you and see you next time.